Hey homies, it's Zach, Ohio Skater here. So gonna talk about something new this time. New thing I've been getting into. My dad has always sort of taught me about this, and he has his own thing going. But I wanted to get into it myself. This is more about like survivalism or doomsday prepping, stuff like that. You know, I always thought that shit was cool, and I've never really given it much thought. But I want to get into it now, so I think part of this channel is also gonna continue to talk about that after this video. You know, I talk about all sorts of things, and this is something that has piqued my interest lately, along with and something I think it goes hand in hand with is the martial arts, because I just recently got into martial arts, and that can help in like self-defense, survivalist prepping situations if someone attacks you or whatever. But another thing it talks about is like weapons, like guns and stuff. I don't have any guns, but I'd like to get some in the future for sure. Maybe just like a pistol and a shotgun, nothing like too crazy, but you know, still would be helpful for sure. And yeah, I don't know, who knows, you know, but I have some knives, you know, that could be used for self-defense. I have a couple knives that I have, so those are cool. But so I guess there's a difference between like survivalism and doomsday prepping. You know, like survivalism is sort of like going out into nature and like trying to stay alive, you know, and like deliberately going and putting yourself in these situations to test yourself. It's sort of like prepping for like if anything like that ever happens. But prepping is really about like any type of natural disaster that can happen and being prepared for anything in that situation. So I mean, you don't not a lot of people deliberately put themselves in like natural disasters unless they're storm chasers, or unless they're like people that volunteer to go help people with hurricanes, you know, and stuff like that. But natural disasters could strike anyone, anywhere, at any moment. You don't have to wait for doomsday for a natural disaster to happen, you know, and it's more common sense type stuff like that, you know. But these magazines talk about all that type of stuff. I got some magazines about this stuff. Now, two of these magazines I bought a long time ago, and I just wanted some magazines to put on my table to make my apartment look nice. And I never really got into them, but I bought two more magazines like it recently, and I've been reading those, and so that prompted me to go back to those other magazines that are about it. So I'll show you the ones I bought recently first. So this is the Popular Mechanics Ultimate Survival Guide. And this one so far is talking about like natural disasters and stuff like that. Like I'll show you. It has like disasters we will face, and then it's got like a wildfire, a house fire, a blizzard, which I think a blizzard would be appropriate for where I live for sure, because we get cold in the winter. But a house fire too. We don't get many wildfires, but a house fire, a blizzard, that's definitely relevant to my situation, you know. And then a blackout, that's relevant anywhere. The electric grid could always go down, you know. And tornadoes, we get some tornadoes here in Ohio, but all sorts of stuff like that. And it's just tips to survive in those situations, you know, common sense things that you can do to survive in those situations, and it's really cool. So I recommend this. I recommend reading stuff like this, you know, to prepare for any sort of natural disaster that happens, to stay alive. Because the thing with a natural disaster is it's different than like doomsday prepping, because when you're doomsday prepping, you're assuming doomsday is going to happen, and for a long time there's going to be no order. There's going to be chaos and disorder. Natural disasters, they suck, and they're deadly, and they suck. But I mean, presumably it's going to be fixed and life is going to go on as usual after that, you know. So that's the little difference between the two. But yeah, and it talks about like first aid, having a first aid kit, and stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to get myself a first aid kit, and I got to do that. But anyway, this next one, recoil off grid. So they in this one, they have this event called Undisclosed. And I guess there are these events, like training events, people can go to practice, like survivalism and stuff like that. And you have professional people that train you. So they invited some people to this event. And there was like, they gave them some days of training on like close combat, long range shooting, first aid and like camouflage and building yourself a shelter and stuff like that. And then they had them do this mission where like it was a fake practice mission, but like this NGO worker got kidnapped and they had to go rescue him or whatever. And it's really entertaining to read about. And they put all that into use, and it's really cool. And you know, this one has all sorts of advertisements for different equipment you can get, so it's useful for finding the good type of equipment. Like, it has advertisements, and it even has like they write about certain gear, you know, like guns, knives, packs that you can wear, like water bottles, and I guess like suits and stuff you can use for shelter and stuff like that. So it's really cool. Yeah, and I really like this one. And also in this one, they go to the Amazon and learn from like indigenous people in the Amazon, like survival tactics from indigenous people in the Amazon. That's cool. So yeah. And then this one, Prepper Magazine Survival Guide. You know, it's like this one has a couple. I've read a couple articles in it so far, and it talks about like when you're caught alone in a disaster, or not in a disaster, but out in the wilderness, when you find yourself alone, in ways to handle your mental health, like breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, to control your mind state and not have a panic attack, and just gear you can have with you, and just to always be doing something when you're out by yourself, because when you're doing something that is going to aid in your survival, you don't sit around and you're not thinking about, you're not going to panic or anything, you're not going to let that set in. You gotta, and it talks about like letting the negative thoughts just go away, like sending the negative thoughts away and just having positive thoughts, and always be at work on your survival. And yeah. And it talks about, this one talks about, let me see here. Yeah, this one talks about how to set up like a pantry for your, wait, let me see. Yeah, this one talks about how to set up a pantry for to be ready for like save food for like if the shit goes down and you need food for a while. Like, you know, water is important. You can only go 3 days without water. You got to keep 1 gallon of water per person per day with you. And non-perishable items are items that take a long time to expire. Canned stuff, rice, beans, you know, keep all that stocked, you know. And yeah, Prepper Magazine. This is one of the old ones I got from a couple years ago. And it's really cool. And it offers like a way to budget when you're buying for things you're gonna save, like food you're gonna save, a way to do that on a budget. And it talks about the importance of eating right and exercising to prepare yourself for these type of situations, you know. And it's good stuff, you know. Eat right, exercise. You never know what could happen. You never know when you'll need the strength to get through something, or you'll never know when you'll actually need to be healthy, you know. Like a lot of times people just say, oh, working on eating healthy, it's just people just want to look a certain way, you know. But I mean, you'll never know when your health and your physical ability will come in handy when you need to survive. And that's another reason I've been doing this martial arts stuff, and that's why I like to exercise, and that's why I like to hike, you know, is get out in nature. And it's not just the enjoyment of nature, but it's the preparedness of navigating the nature that's around me, you know what I'm saying? So yeah. And then this is another old one I got, but it's also a recoil off-grid one. But this one, I really wanted to read. I was thinking about just like not even making the video about the older ones, but this one I think is important because this one is not just about like being out in nature and surviving, but like what can go down in a city, in a metropolitan area, you know. And it talks about being like caught in a riot in your car. It gives an example of like your newborn baby was just born. It had some health complications at the hospital, but you're finally taking it home with your wife, and you and your wife and your baby are in this car, and you drive into a riot. And what do you do when you're in that riot? And it talks about like legal stuff, like what type of force can you use without being like caught on the wrong side of the law, you know. And it says to mainly try to not hurt anyone and just turn your car around and go as quickly as possible. Even if they're around your car, they're probably going to get out of the way. Don't hurt anyone, but use the car aggressively so they get out of the way, and then just turn around, call 911, stay in the line, and use the amount of force that they are using against you to repel the attack, and don't go overboard. And that's when you get into legal trouble, you know what I'm saying? But that shit can happen in cities, you know. This shit can go. Survivalists and preppers, they think all the shit goes down in nature, like natural disasters, and they picture everything happening in nature, but this shit can happen in city streets. And I've been to protests. I've never been to a violent protest, and I don't think I would really like to participate in a riot. Obviously, this is a socialist flag. I am a socialist, but, you know, anything can happen to anyone in that situation. You hear about, like, on the news, like, people who were there supporting the protests and they died from some crazy accident. And, you know, people die all the time in riots, and it's just, this is what you can do to survive in a more urban environment when there's when there's civil unrest, you know. And obviously we support people's right to protest, but anything can happen, you know. So I recommend you pick up magazines like this, you know. Popular Mechanics, Ultimate Survival Guide, Recoil Off-Grid, Prepper. You know, this is all good stuff, and I'm going to be utilizing it in my life, and I'm going to be doing some things to help plan and help myself survive in the event of any natural disaster, civil unrest. You know, we have to be prepared. So I wanted to make a quick video about that, and I think this shit is really cool to read about. And like I said, my dad's taught me some stuff about this before. He has his own little pantry of stuff to keep to survive, and he's always talked about it, and I want to get into it too. So I have been reading these magazines, and it's just very entertaining. I've read a lot of these 4 different magazines in the past few days, and I think it's very important stuff. So yeah, maybe I'll make more videos about survivalism or prepping or something like that. But I don't know, I gotta learn more about it. But I just wanted to make that quick introduction to this topic on this channel. You know, I've never talked about this before. Never thought about it much before unless my dad was talking about it, but definitely useful stuff. So anyway, peace.